started going out on the road and speaking to people and talking to people and telling about all these fabulous dreams I had and that they could make them a reality also. And a lot of people said, well, this is impossible. So early in my early days, I took some of my ideas. I invented this, well, first a solar car, later on, hybrid electric. And I talked to the federal government, GM, and different entities about all these ideas I had. And everyone kept telling me, they said, well, Sonny, this is okay, but, you're not an engineer, you're not this, you're not that. And so finally, through all the laughing and criticism, I obtained a doctor's degree in science and technology. Then people started to listen to me. And for those that showed up tonight, if you don't fall asleep right at the end of my lecture, I'm going to show you what's inside these boxes. And I'll guarantee you've never seen this before in your entire life. Every time I make a presentation, I try to do something totally new, something, because I hate to get stagnant. I hate to bore the audience. But we'll start out by saying anyway, with those cars, I found out that most people are programmed to believe what they believe, and they don't like to change it. And I have a lot of people, I tell them, well, I invented the fountain of youth. They think it's funny. But I can tell you, there's a lot of people here that seen me over a long period of time. One lady said, and one gentleman today, well, your hair has grown just since yesterday. And that is true. I've got a lot of people that it's helped them. I'm not going to get up here and say, it's this or that or the other. I'm just going to tell you that people tell me it's awesome, it's incredible. I've had all kinds of documented cases. I went to the federal government. A lot of people say, well, about the government. Well, they treat me real grand, and I'm real happy with them. And they was able to let me get a license for a food supplement and also to market it here in the United States. And we just signed a nice contract with a group in Florida that are marketing the Lp10 all up and down the East Coast. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to come here today because, it seems like funds are always short. But this is a product I'm talking about. It's called Lp10. Originally, they called it Love Potion number 10. And someone said, well, now listen. And I said, well, don't think anything is created with love. And the reason I started with this is because in order to get this, I got off the grid, and I do produce and publish and sell a book. It's called the Starship Module Book. And I've given away the plans for the cosmic cooler for a number of years. They're in this book. It also tells you about the rejuvenation of cell tissue. It shows you pictures of some of my cars and what I've done. But recently, I got into another endeavor, and it shows you how the electrons are actually captivated. And I've probably sold 1,000 of these books at least, and we keep upgrading them. Also, I wanted to point out in Exotic Research on page 49, this is just a new one. There's also another article written about the cosmic cooler. And I started out, and I had this dream. One thing I dreamed of was I believed there was a better way of life, and I didn't believe in the nuclear reactors. I spent a lot of time and money. I finally was able in 1994 with some other environmentalists to get the last of the reactors shut down. I've talked to some of the key engineers from Chernobyl. I've been to NASA. I've been to Washington, D.C. several times, and my work is very credible. But the main thing of it is I had this dream, and the dream was that I could help the environment. I could try to, save Mother Earth, but nobody was interested in that. And so I invented these cars, and the cars worked real good, and of course GM had cars, and nothing was working like I thought it would. So finally I decided I would go out and start doing lectures. And the first year I'd done a lot of them, and I started talking to people, and I'll bet you there's a lot of people in this audience that's heard me speak before, seen my lectures, seen the material. And the old original Starship book had a brown cover, and we called it the Earthship, and there's probably a few of those around. Then Dennis Weaver, I found out, had a movie out and produced what they called the Earthship, and I always wanted to call it Starship anyway, so I changed it to the Starship Module Home. And another thing we changed as we went along the way was I used to, show up in a little different type of clothes, and and my beard was really super long, and I was bald back then. And they said, well, and even Steve said this time, he said, you know, Sonny, have you got a suit? He said, I want everybody to wear suits. And I thought about it for a while, and I even thought about go getting one, and I thought, why should I do that? You know, I'm who I am, and so I did get silk shirts, and I did go to black Levi's, and I quit wearing my thongs, and I never did wear a robe. But the moral of the story is, you know, you do have to upgrade a little bit, and you have to change, you know, your outside appearance. But I'm still the good guy inside. I still help a lot of people. My mission on earth now with the Lp10 is to try to help people that really, really, really need it and want to. But, you know, I find there's a lot of people that like to get old and they like to die, but I could never see myself as that kind of person. Now, on the Starship module home, I have what I call the cosmic cooler, like I said, and it's a chamber, and the mean temperature stays right around 48, 50 degrees, which is the same as a refrigerator, but it has no input of electric power. There are no moving parts, nothing to wear out in the whole house. It operates a deep well pump, a computer, a washing machine, and any other apparatus. I don't have a television, by the way. Of course, that's not a high-powered brain, but I don't believe in television. I used to get up in the morning, you know, I felt so good. Man, I'd feel so good. I'd want to watch the news or weather. Guess what would happen? I'd watch the news and I'd be kind of depressed, and I'd get better and I'd see the world situation. So I eliminated that, and I, you know, got a radio and I got a CD player and all that stuff, and I put on, you know, I like rock and roll, and put that on and I feel good, see? And recently I had another birthday, and I got another year older, and I was thinking, well, now what have I really done for myself? And I thought again, well, there's one thing I have done. I stuck with my dreams. I stuck with my goals. I didn't compromise. And so now I can go in the winter and go home, you know, go in the summer, go home, and the house never changes. I don't have any maintenance on it. And, you know, the cosmic cooler, as you'll see, I store food in there. I store water in there. I eat everything. And recently, a friend got me involved in, we decided to make this movie, see? And, you know, I'd kind of drug on, but, you know, I'm a guy that likes to persevere. I remember my father used to always say perseverance. We'd be out in a rainstorm, you know, the tractor would run out of fuel, and the drain drill would be out of seed, and I'd say, what are we going to do now, Dad? And he'd say, perseverance, and I never forgot it, so we finished it. And I'm going to show you an excerpt of it today, and part of it, and it shows, you might call it a blow-by-blow description of still frames of the house and being put together. And also there's I've been on television many, many times, and it shows you inside the cosmic cooler and what it looked like at that time. And I figure, you know, pictures or visual aids are worth millions of words, because, you know, people relate to that. And today, people don't seem to have time to read. What they seem to do is watch television. So we're going to have that, and I'm going to roll it. And then what I'd like to do is, you know, take on a few questions, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that, you know, have a lot of questions. But I'd like us all to watch this first. So I guess with that, Larry, if you go ahead and roll that, we'll watch it here. I lived in that trailer there for about 4 years while I was building it. That's my girls when I started. That's my father there. He's deceased now. That's my cosmic cooler coming out of it inside the house.
Bottle of youth. This little brown bottle around the world, it's going around the world. It's growing hair, helping arthritis, and some claim adds years to your life.
Oh yeah, a lot of people say I'm way ahead of my time.
In the yard, proof. A solar car powers his Starship module home. Another car that gets 88 miles to the gallon. The newest invention? Love Potion number 10.
This is Lp10, and we originally called it Love Potion number 10. We've had a lot of people that their hair grew back. We've had people that had arthritic pain that it seemed to eliminate. A lot of people tell us it gives them a more wellness effect, more energy. They feel better. All kinds of good things have happened from it.
Ward's not only the inventor, he's a client. He was a hairless Sonny Ward just 2 years ago.
This is what my head looks like now, and that's the new hair growth, as you can see there.
The secret behind Love Potion number 10? The Cosmic Cooler. Looks like just a food pantry, but it charges everything inside with electrons.
When you're short of electrons, you have no electrons in your body, you sag, you deteriorate, your blood circulation slows down. When you got adequate electrons, it changes all the cells.
It's not just Lp10 in the cooler. Everything Ward eats and drinks spends time sitting on the shelf, gaining electrons.
This was given to me by a friend that growed it in a garden last fall. And normally I'd stored potatoes and a lot of tissue in here, but I took it out.
What does it do to the fruit?
It just makes it last longer. It rejuvenates it. Cell tissues actually get younger instead of older. And like apples will get fresher and crisper. Lettuce will get crisper.
But its interest in his modern-day snake oil, Lp10, he hopes keeps the longest.
What I'm all about, I think, is trying to prove that my work is really credible. And I always wanted to change history. I guess go down in the history books like, some of the famous inventors.
Bottle of Lp10 can be yours by contacting Sonny Ward in Hamer, Idaho. Contact him by calling 208-662-5268.
Or Scott likes to call it hammer.
Hammer.
Stop! It's slipped
Hammer
out.
time.
I knew
Hammer
it was
time.
Hamer. That's great. He's a great guy. You
Oh,
get
yeah.
his stuff if you want to order it.
That's right. You can just call that number.
We all pitching in, we're getting a bottle, see if we feel
I could
invigorated.
use some of that Love Potion number 10.
Dip Scott in it. Maybe.
Thanks very
Yeah.
much, Ted.
Well, thanks. But anyway, I thought that would give you some visual aid, and you could more or less see what the house was like and what it entailed. And all those people you see on there are friends, that donated a labor here and there. But basically, I built the house myself. I used salvage materials for a lot of it. There was tearing down some potato cellars, and I went down there with a big truck and got a lot of 2x6s and 2x4s. Some of the insulation I used, the blue board, some of the wiring, a lot of the parts to, you know, put it together was salvage. But it was kind of funny in the end, you know, finally, you know, I got a building permit, and finally, you know, they came and said, hey, we got to charge you taxes on this. And they come from the county, you know, and my kids was there alone. I'd gone to town. They was a little afraid to let anybody in, so they waited around. I got back. Anyway, they said, you know, there's something wrong here. And I said, well, what do you mean? I was kind of nervous because, you know, I'd built it myself, and I thought it was too cold and everything. And they said, well, this house doesn't have any heating or air conditioning. There's no refrigerator. He said, we don't know how to figure this. And I thought, oh, no, it won't work on the computer. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, we'd like you to come in this week. And I thought, oh, no, now what? And I'd had a little trouble on the sewer to start with, you know, because of the building codes and the clay in the soil. So anyway, I goes into them and I said, oh, well, what now? And they said, well, we put this on the computer and your house isn't worth anything because it doesn't have anything. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, there's nothing in there, so, you know, we can't charge you for a house that doesn't have a refrigerator or anything else because it's no value. And so the first bill I got was the value of the house. It cost me about $100 and something. Then they said they made a mistake, and my house taxes now I think cost me $254 a year because the house doesn't have any value. So that was a good lesson in itself to learn. And on the other hand, you know, people ask me a lot of times about solar, and it does have photovoltaic panels. There's 12 of them on a car, and they used to run that car all over the country, but it was so slow, you know, and as speeds went up, it would only go 35 miles an hour, but I drove it countless miles. I don't know what we put, 6, 8, 10,000 miles on over a period of about 2.5 years, but it provides all the power for the house. And then I also bought a trace inverter, a good one, and this was all back in 1988, and somebody says, well, it's not a cost-effective. Well, the whole system, you know, I don't remember, it cost me $3,800 or $3,700 for everything back then. It's run faultlessly for 10 years, and nothing wears out, nothing goes wrong, you have no problems with it. And, you know, if somebody says, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that, you don't have to do anything. All you got to do is consume the power. And I find, like, on longer days like now, you know, I have to do a load of washing, I guess I have to do that. Or, you know, cut the power supply off, or, you know, water the grass or something, but you have an excess of power. In the wintertime, the shortest days of the year, you do have to conserve. There's probably, oh, I'd say 5 to 6 weeks, 3 weeks especially, the sun just barely comes up and it goes down. Another phenomenal thing about it, and I'll give you this, I had a couple of guys that we was working on the internet and getting on the internet, and that's another story in itself. But anyway, we had these two gentlemen come, and of course they had business suits on, and they had big long trench coats, and the car was warm, and they had this secretary, and before they left, she had to go out and start the car so they didn't freeze to death. You know, it was really, really cold, sub-zero. I mean, it gets cold there in the winter. So I set them down what I call the hot spot, you know, on this couch in the office there. And they sat there, and they was there probably 5 minutes, and pretty soon the top coat comes off. And then pretty soon they're sitting there for about another 10 or 15 telling me this business, and I'm laughing, and they started to squirm, and the suit coats come off. And pretty soon the ties come unloosened, you know, and then they sat there and they started laughing, and they just look at each other like a couple of kids, and they started laughing because it blew their whole conception of what life really is or what ought to be happening, because it shouldn't be doing that with absolutely no heat in it. And the reason it's able to do this is because it captivates microwaves. Anytime you put microwaves through glass, of course you get infrared. And I had these 4 skylights made, and a friend of mine, the grandson to the Corning fortune, got them cast for me, and they're just like the Hubble spacecraft. And they weren't that expensive, and they're hand polished, but even on, you know, moderate days, it puts out a tremendous amount of heat. And it's so designed that it has southern exposure. There's no windows on the north side like you can see. And in the wintertime, we have really, really hard north winds. And the wind comes up over the back of it and just goes over that roof, and it hardly even cools it off. It has over, I don't know, 15,000 square feet of silver mylar on the outside. and it's off the ground, and it provides this energy force. And I've had people come there from all over the world, and like I say, I call it becoming unconnected, and it just blows their conception of what reality really ought to be. And sometimes they accept it, sometimes they get angry because, you know, they're just so totally disorientated and confused. And recently, a good friend of mine, you know, got this wild idea that we should build one further south, and there are some constructed. So we went down to a place called Dallas, Texas, and he, you know, got some people together and basically done the same thing. And, you know, there's another piece to this story. I've had winds in my area up to 75 miles an hour, and, you know, it felt like the house was kind of breathing, but, you know, I stayed inside, and it pulled up telephone poles and flipped over a semi-truck, but the house stayed intact. Well, down there, he lives in a place called Corinth, and it was on the news, and this big, I guess, tornado come through, and the darndest thing happened. Just 5 feet from it sits his house, and it pulled the roof right off the house. And I guess these people or persons or whatever went and got in this cosmic cooler and stayed there and was praying, and it didn't even affect it. And so we know that it withstands high winds. We know that, you know, it's a very sound structure, and we know it provides most of the energy for itself. But the main thing I believe is the fact that peace of mind, because I believe energy is going to get in short supply. I believe the price of energy of any kind, whether it's gasoline or electricity or whatever it is, it's going to become very, very cost effective when you have to figure, you know, your building plans. And I still see people building great big monstrosities and not even thinking about, you know, conserving power or heat. But on the other hand, you know, how long is it going to last? And maybe forever. And the ironic thing is once in a while people call me up and say, hey, guess what? The power's off. Really? And one time the power went off, and of course without power you can't pump gas, and of course the businesses have to close down. But the most important thing, you can't get any water. And of course I can always have water, and so I had to go around in my solar car at that time, this is a while back, and haul water to people, and boy, they'd be so grateful to get it. You know, they'd bring out every pitcher and glass, and I'd say, oh, well, no, you know. And so we don't realize some of these things, they're not just a luxury, you know, or a convenience or a necessity, it's a way of life. You know, your toilet won't flush, your refrigerator won't work, you know, nothing in your house. Like one guy said, I never even realized this, my garage doors won't even open. I can't even get out of my house. So there's a lot of things when we hook up to the grid, we got to realize that we're entrenched, and that's what I didn't want. I didn't really do it for the economy at that time. I just done it because I was PO'd at the power company. I moved, bought this piece of property. They wanted $7 grand to hook me up because they knew I had solar. And it's just, you know, like the power is probably from here to the, you know, front driveway. But I couldn't get an easement across a neighbor's property because I do have a right-of-way. I got my own right-of-way, and I think, you know, if I'd have pushed it with a wire, but I just thought, hey, this is crazy. So I went and bought some more solar panels, and I started working on this house. And I remember people used to come by and laugh all the time. And at the time, it made me feel really bad, you know, that they had so small the inside. But nowadays, they come by, and it just, I get to laugh. And a friend of mine told me this, son. He says, you know, they all call me son, a lot of them back home. And he said, son, you know, I got to tell you this. He said, you know, crow's hard to eat. He said, it don't matter if you microwave it, or you broil it, or you bake it, it's real hard to eat. And he said, you've made me eat more crow than anybody I ever knew. So with that thought, I want to take on a few questions because I'm sure I haven't covered a lot. But I went on, you know, and I do put this fruit juice like it showed in there. This here particular stuff was what I made clear back in '96. It's 2 years old. The electrons are measurable. You can measure them with a Geiger counter. I've had the USDA out there, and they said it's phenomenal. You know, something's happening. We don't know what's happening. There's definitely some form of energy. I can tell you, you know, it attracts a lot of electrons like Tesla's worked. And I can also tell you, you know, it's been documented about the vortexes and how it works, the high and low pressure, and it's in the book. But the main thing, you know, I think as these technologies go forward, we're going to have to do something. And I think that's the main reason I'm here today. So I'd like to open this for questions. Anybody got any questions?
You met this live?
Well, that's what they told me last time. I think it is.
You mentioned that someone built one down in Dallas where it's a whole lot warmer. and they built essentially the same plan. How cool does it stay in the summer?
Well, I don't have all the documentation, but the gentleman's right here. I'm sure he'll be happy to tell us. Also, we have one in Houston. We have one in Gazelle, California. We have one in Burley, Idaho. Let's see, there's 3 in Canada and a couple in other parts.
Well, maybe we could hear about how cool it stays.
Okay. Go ahead, Tom. Yeah, go up on the speaker. Whoops. Ralph's going to come up, excuse me, Ralph's going to come up here on the speaker and tell us, the last documentation he gave me, it was pretty favorable. I will say this, it takes around 6 to 9 months, usually the first year, to charge. And I started to say this, my house will take on a full lightning bolt, it'll strike it, and it's like a flash bulb going off. And it absorbs a lot of electrons, and so about the first 9 months, you know, it's in the state of charge.
Okay, well, we finished, actually I put a final coat of paint on the outside, so it's,
Your location and stuff.
okay, I'm Ralph Sedeth, and I built a Starship cosmic cooler in Corinth, Texas, using Sonne's geometry or plans. I'm very pleased with it. The heat that Texas is experiencing right now, well, it's just awesome. 115 degrees, you know, is what it's been around my house. And inside the cooler, because right now, Sonny suggested that I keep it sealed off in terms of not letting any light in. I'm really using this time to power it, charge it, and come the fall, I'm going to put a window in. But right now, it's basically just a sealed chamber up and downstairs. So it's a miniature house that you saw here on the
Yeah, what's this dimension? 20 by 20, 18 by 24 or something?
18 by 24,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
It's like a small efficiency, but it's. I'm amazed that the cooler, because our ground temperature's not that cold, like I'd say would be in Idaho or anywhere up north. I'm maintaining even with the temperature outside at 110, 115 degrees. The hottest it's gotten in there is 75. It generally stays around 69 degrees, which, you know, I mean, I'm very pleased. In fact, I seek refuge there on occasion. The other thing, the top side is running around, here again, it depends on the time of day, and if I allow all the trapped heat that the day will, that the day captures, allow it to go out, then immediately, it's the thing that I find most interesting is that it holds temperature, and I'm looking at about a 25 degree to 30 degree difference from the outside to inside. So I look forward to you know, getting through the summer and into the fall, because apparently, like you, Sonny, explained to me, that the cooler works when the temperature is you know, below 65 or in that area. So I'm looking forward to getting some cooler temperatures, but I'm very pleased with it.
Okay, thanks, Ralph. Did that answer your question? I say, did that answer your question?
Well, yes, to a large degree, but so the data is that this year, the cooler area has gotten, well, average 75 or so degrees.
Well, he said about 68. He said it did get as high
It got
as.
as high as 75, but that was just trapped heat. Once I
Yeah.
let the heat out, it went back to
The mean
65.
temperature he's saying is about 65, 68.
Do you notice seasonal differences in the temperature there?
Well, no, I don't. I don't live there, but I can tell you on mine, I've kept data on it ever since I built it. And I can tell you there the other day it got, well, depending on where you stood, from 104 to 107. And the inside temperature of that cooler, usually in the summertime, it bumps up about 58. In the wintertime, it might bump down to 44. And the actual mean temperature is around 48 to 50. The same refrigerator inside of a refrigerator is usually around 47 degrees. Did that answer your question? Any other questions? Go ahead. Okay, it is not a freezer. It's a, well, it depends. I know, but I was going to tell you that I don't have a freezer. But if you wanted a freezer, you could run it off the solar power. They do make a very efficient one in That's one of the next steps. You can only have so many irons in the fire at the same time, but that's one of the next things I'm going to do. But one of the miraculous things of it is like garden produce. You can put any kind of produce, as it says here in the book, in there. And let me give you this example, like apples. I kept apples a year and a half. I bought them in the store, red, delicious apples. And some of them that were stung by the apple magnet disappeared. They literally disappeared with no residue. I've got all kinds of pictures in my briefcase of some of the miraculous things. I've had, like I said, USDA there. And lettuce, give you an idea on lettuce, it'll keep probably a month to 6 weeks. Bananas, like 3 to 4 months. Potatoes, 2 years. Squashes, like in the fall of the year, will still be good the following summer. And you can even get tissues that have been damaged, and it actually makes them better, like lettuce. It'll make it crisper. Cabbage gets so crisp, you can hardly chew it. And somebody mentioned milk here, a young gentleman, and he says it turns it to yogurt. Well, I didn't know that. See, I learn things all the time. That's actually, milk will never sour in there. You can have it in there forever. But it separates, and the water comes out of it, and then it goes to the bottom, and that's apparently what it is. It doesn't smell, it doesn't taste bad, and that's what it is yogurt. And, he said he had heard that. Also, Ralph mentioned the fact of the pyramids of old, mummifying the tissue, and I've got grapefruits, I've got lemons, I've got oranges. They literally have become just like leather and are not rotten. But those apples, getting back to that, first they would turn a little brown, but it will never go to the next apple beside it. It'll just hit that one. And then pretty soon it would get this blue kind of fuzz on it. And pretty soon it'd get smaller, and this fuzz would stay around it and just absorb the moisture. And pretty soon all of it would be gone. It was on paper separators, but it literally would disappear, seeds, core, everything else. Another thing that happened to the apples, they go from red to green, and the tissue inside's green, like when it was on a tree. Another thing we found out is like, I don't know why, a watermelon we put in there, especially if we covered it with tinfoil, in about a week becomes vodka. Another thing we found out, 100% natural orange juice, it has to be natural orange juice, 100%, went in 30 days to alcohol, and then it went in another 30 days to vinegar. And it looked just like orange juice, but it smelled like vinegar and it tasted like vinegar. Next question.
Well, that's one thing I was going to mention. The effects that you're mentioning right now sound exactly like what has been observed in pyramid shapes.
Yes, well, the roof is pyramid, and somebody mentioned, what I found out, some people say 54, some people say 56 degrees. If you split that, it's around, well, what I read, the monasteries anyway, were 22.5 degrees, 23 degrees. And they used to think there were more, but they found in Egypt entire stone plates with actual, to size, drawings chiseled in stone, and it's phenomenal, but it's 22.5, 23 degrees. And that's what the house is. It's what's called a 512 pitch. It rises 12 inches for every, 5 inches for every 12 foot of running space. Got another question?
Yes, you mentioned your cooler. Is that just one room inside the house then?
Yes, it's just one room.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the materials you used in the walls and stuff to construct that?
Okay, it's all in the book, and I suggest to people, if you want to learn more or you want to have an undertaking, or this video is now available, and it gives a lot of information. But the whole thing of it is at the bottom, it's off the ground, so we use blue board. We use 2x6 construction. Then up above the blue board, that's 3 foot, and above the blue board is a material called silver mylar. Now, the outside of the house, originally I used aluminum. They stopped making aluminum. It's against the law. They don't even sell it anymore since 1995. So now we use silver mylar. Ralph used silver mylar in his. And what we do is I used 1.5 inches, and then on the inside I used silver mylar again with what they call gold back. And it's rather than pink insulation, it's gold, and it has the same thing. So I got 3 layers on the outside of the house, 2 foot off the ground, and basically that's it. It's all wood construction. On the inside, I finished it with tongue and groove 1x6 pine, and I'm doing the bedrooms in cedar. And then on the roof, I done something pretty unique. I put plyboard first, then I put a layer of silver mylar double-sided, then I put wax paper, then I put another layer, so I have 120 sheets on the roof alone, all connected together, and they make a tape, aluminum tape. It's like a regular metal, it's just got some sticky stuff, so you have one continual capacitor.
Have you tried any type of electrical testing?
Yes, I have. Yeah, it produces energy. If you put it to ground, it produces about 1.48, which is 1.5 volts, which is the same as the human body. Human body, the whole capacitance of it's 1.47 to 1.48, or 1.5 are about the same as a battery, a small pen-light battery. And all the combined elements in the body is 1.47 to 1.48, same as.
I was just wanting to hear some more about the implosion stuff that you've done and any correlations with Victor Schauberger.
Well, I was going to say all the technology I use uses implosion, and Victor Schauberger, told about the cooling effect. I don't know how many people have seen what I call my red rocket car, but I've displayed it, many hundreds of times all over the United States, and it really shakes people up because, you can stick your finger in your tailpipe and it will suck your finger in there. It blows and sucks and blows and sucks. And if we had it out here, hot a day as it is, you can start it up and let it run forever, and the tailpipe's ice cold, the muffler's ice cold. And I recently drove it to Atlanta, Georgia, 6,000-mile trip and back for the International Hall of Fame Awards. Took it back there and it done the same thing, but it's got 200,000 on it now, and it doesn't burn a drop of oil. It's never had anything done to it. It's never been in the shop. It runs like a top. It'll pass anything on the road. One time we was late, I was giving lectures in Houston, and I had to be Dallas, and I, got waylaid, so I drove between 95 and 104. The computer cuts it out at 104, but I never did get under 95, 100, 102 for 280 miles. No problem. Didn't heat up or anything, and yet it does produce enough heat for the heater. Also, there's no buildup in the tailpipe of carbon at all. You can still see the welding sediment, and after 200,000, like I say, it'll still pass anything. It holds 7 world records. It's a form of implosion in gas. I built an electric motor. I displayed at Tesla that you can suck power. The more power you suck out of it, the cooler it runs. If you don't take any power out of it, it heats up and blows the capacitors. And a powered, several, a big electric drill, small electric drill, 2 skill saws, a jigsaw, and something else, all simultaneous out of it, and the input or the prime driver showed 0 amperage, and the more you pull out of it to extend, it runs freer and freer. It's another form of implosion. Tesla predicted about, the car, and he had analog model but no working models. Let's see what else is implosion. The house actually uses implosion of the vortex. I made the air rocket that has been documented to turn between 140 and 250,000, and it doesn't disintegrate because it uses implosion, literally sucks the car down the road. And so those are a few forms of implosion that I know of.
Can you explain what implosion is and how some of these motors would run like that? I think a lot of people.
Well, I think Tesla put it better, and this has been documented. I've mentioned it in many of my lectures. He said it was positively ascertained, only doubtful, the fact that it's an exaggerated Thomson effect, whereby, and it's on the front of the movie, whereby the heat flows from the copper ribbon, and what he means copper ribbon, to the tinfoil of the condenser. In those days, they used a ribbon, a flat ribbon wire. Now we use a round wire. And in other words, the heat always flows. And what Thomson effect means is that when you run electrons down the wire, the heat will always run the way the direction of the current does. And that's another form of implosion. That's how it does it. But all these things use capacitors. And then I wanted to pass on one more thing. What about water? Nobody's mentioned that, so I'll tell you. So I didn't like hot water. Some people say they like water room temperature. I personally like my water cool or cold. And so I put the tank on the input coming into the house. Guess where? In the other end of the cosmic cooler, out of the chamber. And so the water always stays what? About 58 degrees, real nice. And then I took the other tanks and I put them up higher in the roof, and so all the extra heat, you know, it gets about 80, 85 degrees, that water, and so I have free water, hot water from my washing, and you can shower in it, and nothing to cause any money, but there's another form of implosion. And anytime you use capacitors, you get implosion. And what actually Tesla said, and what's been documented, and I'm probably the implosion expert, is if you fill a large tank and then you drain it out really fast, there's no resistance. And to give you a practical application, my solar uses implosion. So I got 2 Optima batteries, they're one of my sponsors. 2 small batteries are just 12-volt batteries. But when you put a big, big load on, you go out there with a multimeter, and the energy coming in, both the voltage and amperage, it's 1 volt to 1.5 volts higher, plus several amps, and you don't do anything. And the reason of it is you create a vacuum effect. Electrons will do it, gases will do it, hydrovacs do it, you know, the car does it, the motors do it, the house does it, and anytime you have a deficit, the only problem is, under those conditions, eventually the tank's going to run dry. So if you'd done it perpetually, the batteries would go dead. But, you know, like running the washer, you see you get a lot more energy out than you put in. That's the key. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah, kind of. So what you're saying is that you have your solar panels kind of hooked up in a different way? Is
No,
that-
no, it's just the way you deplete the energy.
Uh-huh.
It's the way you deplete the energy. And, you know, it's very simple, but apparently it's difficult to understand. But if you fill anything and you pull it out at a rapid rate, whether it's air, do you know what a phase change, anybody know what a phase change is? That's another form of it. You take a small pipe and you have it get bigger, and you have it get bigger, and that's what those pipes from my house. And I got a little pancake fan at the top. So say it gets a little hot, you kick on the fan, guess what happens? The air comes through and it goes in the bigger pipe and it makes a phase change, so it automatically cools. Anytime you do that, in my area they use what they call hydrovac. They cook potatoes in this great big 55-inch cylinders. In the old days they used to run them up on conveyor belts and they get mold and everything because they needed to cool them. Well, now they just have a big hydrovac. It's, you know, huge, big pipe. They cook them in there. It's got a big plunger with a rod, a hydraulic rod, and 2 O-rings, and they cook them in there. As soon as they're off, the pressure's off, they pull this plunger up under with hydraulic pressure. Guess what happens to the temperature? It drops like a rock. And each time you subject anything to vacuum pressure, the temperature falls drastically. That's how the Earth even works. It's a real simple process. You want to say something, Ralph?
Yeah, Sonny, I just, in light of the Starship, which I really found exceptional because my background in medicine taught me from a biophysics standpoint of what the energy system that exists in the human cell is very much like the energy system that you created in the Starship with the high-low. You got the high side, which is where the heat, or no, I won't say the heat, this is where the house is, where the roof pitches up to the top, and you got the low side, which goes down into the ground in the cooler. Well, the high side, what he called the Thompson effect, circulates clockwise. Okay, so you got clockwise.
And it always expands.
It's in his book,
yeah.
but if you get his book,
Yeah.
it shows it. But the interesting thing, that also goes down to the micro, and the Starship being the macro of the example. The Starship energy, anyway, the high
I thought it
side,
was in here, but apparently it
it's in there somewhere.
Well, it
Anyway,
isn't in this one. Should be, but it's not.
well, I'll just describe it then. Well, the hot air spinning this way and the cold air spinning this way. So you got these 2 energies. You can't. I try to sit in there. I meditate in there. Try to at least once a day. But I try to feel it. And one day when we had it shut up for about a week, I don't know if it was in my mind or not, but I felt energy. And now I go in there just for a few minutes a day because of the heat factor. It's just too hot, 120 degrees outside. It's still 85 in there during the day. It drops down around 75 at night, and it drops to 69 in the cooler. But my example is that these 2 energies rotating in the opposite vortex pull in this vacuum or creates this vacuum that sucks in the cosmic rays or the cosmic energies. And once inside the house, it's trapped in the capacitor. because it's a giant capacitor. I mean, in the designs, it's all taped up, so you've got layer and layer and layer and layer of this silver mylar that's sealed off. The walls are a separate capacitor from the ceiling. So it's not just a regular house by any means, although it could be built, you know, with a few friends. The reason I built it is because I saw the exceptional effects of the Lp10 that it did on me and the friends that I gave it to. That made me, spawn me to look into the Starship, because I saw not only what it's done for Sonny in the last few years, you know, I mean, if you've known Sonny as long as I have, you know the changes that occurred in him. But that's why, you know, I think that's why I think it's working, because you got that
Well, so, Ralph, it's like a figure-8 motion, you know.
Yeah, there
I
you
talked about this first lecture I ever gave, and there was a gentleman here, he worked for Chrysler, I guess I don't know if he's here right now, but anyway, I explained it to him, and there was a lady there with a gold halo, and she said, well, you mean, you know, that's the infinity sign, the figure-8, and I told her the energy always goes like this, and it does. And there's one circle that turns this way, and one turns this way. But what they don't teach you in any school book you can find is the fact that, you know, if something's going to get hotter, it's got to give up cold energy. It's got to. Or if it's going to get colder, it's got to give up heat. Now, they teach you the hot side, but they don't teach you the cold side. And in the diagram, I guess this doesn't have it, but in the diagram it shows that. And I took it out of an earth science book, an 8th grade earth science book, and it explains that to you. And, you know, when I was 8 years old, I seen The Wizard of Oz, and I wondered how it could suck that house up. And I went to school, and they said, Sonny, you know, you're always thinking about all this stuff. Forget all that. You know, concentrate on your work. And it just, you know, it blows. You know, and they showed that twister. Oh, that's the most phony thing I ever seen, because they don't blow, they suck. And if they didn't, they wouldn't pick up trees and telephone poles and houses, would it? No. And so I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So I designed that air rocket. I took it down to Tesla, you know. Another fantastic idea. It'll suck anything right in there, suck the car right down the road. See? Well, so here's the phenomena, you know, like you said. You don't explain anything because people can't understand it. And simply put, you know, there's two forces out there, suction and pressure. And when you put the two together, you get the whole force. And you know, today, how much time have I got left? What time is it? Huh? Well, I know, but what time is it? 8:20? Well, I get plenty of time. But anyway, carrying on further, I brought this neat little thing, and you know, I found out when I was 8 years old, I was working on this idea, and I put it off. I do that a lot because I couldn't get the rest of the parts. And I met this other guy, Joe Allen, and he actually built this working model and worked with a guy, Larry Spring, that put it together and made a little photovoltaic motor. You can put light on it and it'll spin the rotor. Well, that's really neat. But then I said, Joe, I said, wow, I've known this guy for 3 years, know him well. I said, you know what you have there? And he didn't realize what he had. But he said, that's the magnetic bearings I've been looking for years. And so he got it to me just the day before I left. And on the way, you know, I experimented, and I showed somebody the other night, and it pinched my finger. Got it between a couple of magnets, because you got to realize, you know, this is a new toy, and this is called a working model. But one of the magnets, you know, crashed into something, and it was a figure like this, you see. And of course, now it's like this. Now, here's another thing that intrigued me about magnets. You know, you would think you could put that back together because south and north, right? But it becomes another magnet, and they repel each other, you know. But it shouldn't, but it does. But then I went on and you know, and it has this is a Chinese throwing star right out of Chinatown, okay? And in these boxes, I'm going to put them over here on the table, and I want to go through this because I'm sure somebody's going to have some questions. And there's always those that are scrutinized. And I want to say this. I've only had this actually in my possession for a very few days, and already it's just proved to me phenomenal effects. But this star will literally rotate round and round and round and round from the magnetic flux with no rotor, no commutator, no energy input, and you'll see an effect on it. And the points appear to push, and the center appears to pull. But the way Joe set it up, and I need a volunteer, you know, somebody, this thing's heavy, you know, and I'm going to build a gimbal, so I need a volunteer. Who wants to come up here and volunteer to hold it? Anybody? Would somebody like to come up? Who would like to come? You want to come up here? Okay, and someone else, because it gets pretty heavy after a while. I have a couple of guys. Okay? Sure, okay. Okay, now we're going to put this together, and I've got a portable mic. Can you still hear me okay, Larry? Okay, okay, and inside of here, now let's be really careful with this, because I've about destroyed it already. Okay, these are the standard Chinese. They got a name for them, but you know, right? You know, they're standard balls, right? Okay, there's two of them. And the magnets have to be turned north and south, so we know the poles of the Earth. And this is what I believe this is. This is a planetary drive. And I wanted to show people, you know, that why the planet drives and how it does. So here's the first one, okay? Here's the second one. And of course, it's the opposite charge, same thing, okay? Same thing. And you got to be real careful. And last night, my daughter mentioned that today. I got fiddling around with it, and they got between my fingers, and they just grab onto everything, okay? And then we put this Chinese star in here. Now, in the first place, this is, you know, it's non-magnetic, but it becomes magnet, you know. And you can take it and put it close to here, and it will, even through the air, it will pick something up, even though. But watch this. Okay, it'll stick to here, right? And that's nothing too great. But this gets greater because this thing is heavy. Now look at this. Ain't that something? Now watch this. Okay, now watch the bottom magnet. And then I thought that was pretty phenomenal, but I knew that if I could separate them. So then I applied outside magnetic force, and it's going to stop. Now I'm going to have him hold this, and I'm going to try not to lock it together, because that's when it gets you. But you know, when you put this other magnet on here, what do you think happens? It's going to stop here in a minute. What do you think happens to it? It should just attract it and stop, right? That's what the normal thing would tell you. And it will. But guess what? If you move it out, or you put it in exactly the right place, what will it do with it? Will it repel it? Sure it will. You see? Watch this. And I found out if you get it exactly in the right spot, and that's the key to it, and I have just barely been playing with it, it'll rotate it and rotate it and rotate it. And I found that when this was together anyway, this outside place was the best. And I could start, and it seemed to rotate this way the best. Okay, and I want you to hold it, and we'll try to get everything set up. We'll see if we can start it and get it to rotate. You want to be first?
Sure.
I want to do it. Okay, and you have to hold on to this magnet. Okay, and hold it as steady as you can. Now ask me, is it heavy? Okay, you're going to be comfortable with that, huh?
Heavy equipment operator.
Well, the whole thing is, you're going to have to hold it steady, see, because I don't have the gimbals for it. Okay, and we'll see if we can get it started and not. Okay, watch. Whoops. If it's too close, you see, it won't rotate. Or if it's too far away. And so the key is getting it just right. See, you hear it locks up. Okay, and then it will turn. Now, I had it the other day. I spun it for 2 solid minutes, and I found different things with it. I got to get it started here first. Okay, there we go. That's too close. You see how it locks up? Okay, right in here somewhere is the best. And I have to be real steady. See, it's a little too far away. Okay. There we go. I thought this was the greatest thing that I'd seen in a long time. Yeah, can't get it. Well, I think if I get down lower, it'd be better. How you doing there? Is it getting heavy yet? And you know, if you don't think that thing is heavy, you ought to come up here. And it appears, see in the center, there we go, maybe up here. Here we go. I just didn't have it in the right place. See? But I'm going to take it home and experiment more with it. But see, it shouldn't repel both sides. It should only walk up. But if you put it in the right spot.
Did you say that the star was non-magnetic?
Yeah, the star is non-magnetic. See, here it is. The too close doesn't work, and too far away doesn't work.
What if you pulse it in and out?
Well, that'll work easy. But then, you know, oh yeah, that will work every time. And sometimes, okay, now he's probably getting tired, so is it heavy? Is it getting heavy?
Not really.
Not really. Okay, see there? Okay, here, let's try it one more time. Oops, see, because it will just stick here. There we go. Right in here is why I had the best success. And watch the bottom magnet. Now, if we just can hold real steady, it'll keep going. See, we're just a little off. Isn't that something? And it should. This is what phenomenal, this is what conventional thinking would tell you. It would just stop right here. But it doesn't. Watch.
You notice the difference if you try approaching it from magnetic?
I haven't had it long enough to play with it as much as I'd like to, but, you know, it does work.
From Earth's magnetic north, maybe?
Let him hold it for a minute, okay? And I tried holding the ball.
You need a nice wooden base on it. or
Yeah,
two
and, well, that's what I said, but I've only had it in my possession just a little while. Another thing I noticed, if you flipped it, and then, you know, and of course I busted this magnet now, and it just has it about right, or no, it'll stop, but it went a long, long time. But if you have it too close, it'll stop it. If you have it too far away, it stops it. Go see here how good I am. It's too far away. And always the bottom turn. See that? Isn't that something? All right, here, let's try this. Okay, let me get it going here first. There we go. See? And of course, you know, if you move it in, but it shouldn't, whoops, if you move it in, it shouldn't do that, but it does. And right up here, I noticed, you know, a repulsion too. Or down here. But anyway, that's, you know, one thing I thought was really neat. There you go. Okay. Just to have you get it covered right. Of course, you know, you always get up in front of everybody and you're a little more nervous and shaky and, you know, but what I'm going to plan on doing is putting this together and see if it will actually, you know, rotate and rotate and rotate. Has anybody else got any ideas on it?
How are the balls constructed?
They're just, I don't know, I never, you know, you could probably tell us more than anybody, but apparently they put some music in there, and, well, he travels a lot. He travels abroad. I don't travel, you know, out, but these came directly from Chinatown. And one guy told me, I'm going to go home and build me one, and I'm going to go home and play with mine a lot. See? Anyway, so much for this. Here we go. Yeah, I've had it, a lot of different things. But anyway, everybody got any ideas? Huh? I got it. You got it? Yeah. And it'll only work if it's north and south. Now, I'm going to show you something else here real quick. Well, I done that, and I'm going to show you this. Now, if you turn this magnet over, see, and of course, the north and south, I'll just turn this over on here. It won't pick it up. Yeah, it did there. The other day I couldn't, maybe that was my problem. The other day I couldn't get, I tested, you know, but the other day I couldn't get it to pick it up. Well, I told you it wouldn't, see. And you know, it really hurt when you get your fingers, see, but it wouldn't pick it up. So they have to be north to south. In case anybody wants to go home and get this apparatus, I've been told that, you know, you can pick up the whole thing if you know the right people for around $20. Including the cases. I see it'll stay together. And he told me the most that he'd ever got it to go just like this by spinning it was around 2 minutes. And I found out that if I put this inductance into it, you know, a certain way, and I'm going to try different ones. And I tried a heavier magnet, and it wouldn't work. That's the fact right there. See? That's what I would call, you know, something. It's, you know, what?
Does it spin independently of this?
I don't know. Does it? Hold it on to it and see. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it, does it?
You may be just affecting that magnet on the bottom.
Well, it wouldn't matter if it's affecting that magnet on the bottom or the top. It's turning. That's a
Turning
that's
out,
effect.
mostly turning in the opposite direction though, right?
I don't know. Is it? I don't think so. I think it will turn either direction. In my experience, it turns either direction. But see, now you got a counter-motive force, but it wouldn't matter. But it will turn either direction. I don't think it affects it that much. Sometimes I found it would turn one way and sometimes the other. The main thing is it does turn. It doesn't have an armature, it doesn't have a commutator, and it should be either negative or positive. It shouldn't be both, and it shouldn't change. Now here, why don't you quit playing with it and let me make it turn, will you please? Thank you. I always hate that, when you give the lecture and the other guy tries to steal the show, right? When you work so hard to get it turning by its own self, It's almost, he's like trying to make a fool out of you. But do you get the fact? So you go home and, you get yourself one and have fun with it. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I was going to just tell you, be careful, because, boy, they do smart. And when you get you in there, you can't get out very good. You can't get these magnets apart. Okay, now I got to ask you this. Has anybody ever seen that effect before? I haven't. Has anybody else? And the last time, I think I did do pretty good. Okay, but the magnets I found had to be, so they'll attract each other, in case you want to go home and do this. And you got to put them on. And already, see, this in here's got a big chunk out of it. This in here has been broken. Probably would work better if I had the other chunk. And I'll try it one more time. And then I tried holding on this ball. I thought, well, ouch. See, that's what I said. Really wild, isn't it? Now maybe I turned the magnet over. That seems to be a little better. Okay, let's try that. Okay, the best effect I found is like this. Let's see, probably had to get it going here. And I found out this, let's see, this way of rotation was the best. No, it's too far away. There we go. I'm just not quite as steady as I was when I was real young. Now let me try it again. Oh, don't have to. See there, it's repelling. In some places, see, it repels it, in some places it attracts it. Pretty wild. It appeared to me that the outside, let me try it one more time here. It appeared to me that the outside, that's too far away, would, there we go. Come on. No, anyway, I did have one good effect. You go home and play with it yourself, okay? Be careful. And by the rights of magnetism, it shouldn't hold itself together, but it's because of the flux. And when I was young, that's what I couldn't figure out, is how to hold it. Another thing might be good is you could have this either longer or shorter. It wouldn't necessarily have to be this, but it could be anything metal. And you might have this further apart, or you might have it closer. And I make the challenge to anybody that does want to try it, if they get further than I do, to tell other people about it, because that's how these things progress forward. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a few more questions, and we'll call it going to be a wine and cheese social here in just a minute. So if anybody does want to book, they're available. The Lp10, I sell it all the time, and it's also available, and then shortly, the movie will be available. Is there any more questions before we finish out? Everybody's all done? Okay. I don't know. They were sent to me. I couldn't tell you. I'm just telling you what in fact, I was told by another society I probably shouldn't do this, but I never listened to anybody anyway. Go ahead.
Sonny, Art Bell, are you familiar with him at all?
Yes.
Okay, it was about a year or so, I was listening to him on the shortwave, and he talked about some kind of toy, I'm assuming is similar to this. I don't know, I never saw it.
Well, I know you can do that levitation where you take a paper clip and you spin it, and it will turn for a long time, but it quits. And I've seen the Levitron, they call it, but the one I seen did plug into something. And somebody said it was a permanent magnet, but the one I seen, and it was demonstrated by, well, in fact, Mr. Curtis here knows Mike Rush. Rush? Is that his name, Mike Rush? Anyway, in Denver, when I lectured there, he had a Levitron, but it had a power source. All the ones I've ever seen it would rotate, even one revolution had some kind of a power source. This has none. And, you know, I had it to revolve from dead stop, got it started, and got it to go work for at least 2 minutes. And, you know, to me, that's pretty phenomenal. Any more questions? Well, I think that about does it. I hope everybody had fun, and I hope I showed you something today that, I noticed one guy here went to sleep, but we won't, you know, we won't say anything about that. I guess I bored him. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.